question for you. I read an article, Travis, about podcasting, and there was some concern by the author that said it's now potentially looking to be taken over by, you know, people that are like movie stars, the glitterati, things like that. People are getting into it, and they think it may make it like less genuine. And I remember a conversation that I had with my cousin, who he's huge in the fashion industry, and he was talking to a guy that basically gets his clothing at the same place he gets his like cheesecake. It's like all Kirkland is what it says. So those kind of things. So I was like, how I don't understand this. Why would celebrity be bad for fashion? And he went on to tell me that it like makes it less pure. It's not about like women that are working their way through it and young men that are coming in and have dedicated their entire lives to it. Celebrity comes in, they wipe it out. Now they outprice the market. Nobody can compete with them. They get thousands of downloads or, thousands of looks or whatever per page. And I was like, wow, I never really thought about it like that. Like, although we look at celebrities and we're like, yeah, it's a celebrity. This is what we're used to. Do you think that that's a situation that can actually happen in podcasting, and maybe would it ruin it? I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, how would that be?
Well, I think it's already happening. But as far as ruining it, I don't believe that. I think that frankly, the majority of people that say that kind of stuff are kind of stuck in a scarcity mindset. They've been podcasting for 4 years. Their show's not growing and they don't know how to grow the show. And so they look at these people like, Smartless comes in, which is Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, and Sean Hayes, all three, really big Hollywood names. They start the show. They can bring on Barack Obama and LeBron James onto their podcast. Like, obviously us mere mortals down here don't have a chance of competing with them. But and they
But I got you, Travis. I got you.
That's true. So maybe we do have a chance. Yeah, so they actually got together and they created that podcast. Well, it's sold to Amazon. Amazon bought that show recently for like $60-something million. And when you look at that as somebody who's been putting in the work year after year, and you're still struggling to get over 500 downloads an episode or whatever, it would be really difficult, or really easy, I guess, to talk crap about anybody that's coming in like that and how it's going to ruin the industry and blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, to me, man, it's like it's just a challenge. There's a bunch of podcasters coming to space all the time. That doesn't mean that your content won't be listened to. It just means you might have to step up your game. You might be a little bit more original. You might need to do your best to go get better guests on your show instead of settling for mediocre guests just because you quote unquote don't have time to go after the big ones. Like I think that you should. The beautiful thing I talked about, a downside of capitalism. The great thing about capitalism and a free market is that the market decides. So if their show is just that much better, then hey, I don't know what to say about that. Like, so your solution is to not allow good content? Like, that's not the solution. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just be like, no, you're not allowed in this space because you're allowed on TV and you get that space and we get this space because you can't come in here and do better than my content in a month of doing this. It's just all scarcity minded to me. Like, there's plenty of people out there. There's 500 million almost podcast listeners now, which is double than it was like 2-3 years ago. And I think that'll get up to over 1 billion by 2028. And there's fewer podcasters. In 2022, there were fewer people who started a show than in 2021. So the numbers decreasing of creators and the numbers increasing in listeners. So if you're only looking at this from this negative perspective, of course, all you're going to see is negative answers. So you got to allow yourself the opportunity to see what's possible and go after that rather than fearing, oh, well, so-and-so came in and started this podcast. Well, the cool thing about podcasting too is like people only listen to 6 to 8 podcasts at a time. You know what I'm saying? Like if I'm on Instagram, you're following 2,000 people. You're on Twitter, you're following 4,300 people. You're on Facebook, you have 5,000 Facebook friends. You know what I'm saying? So podcasts, like if a listener is going to boot a show out of their lineup to listen to another show, it's going to be because that content is better. So do better, like create better content. And what we're even seeing is a lot of celebrities have come into the podcasting world thinking that they were going to blow up and they didn't. It's not a guarantee for even A-list celebrities or athletes that have this massive following already to come into the space and do well, because long form content actually has to be interesting. Like you can post a picture of, yourself on Instagram and get 400,000 likes. Doesn't mean that you can have an interesting hour-long conversation with another interesting person. So the barrier to entry on podcasting compared to every other platform in terms of celebrity, like as celebrities entering the space and democratizing it, like it's the barrier to entry is much higher in this particular format. And if you take the time to get good at it, you can be really good at it, and you don't have to have anything like, look at Lewis Howes, look at Jordan Harbinger. Like, these are guys that have millions and millions and millions of downloads every single month on their show, and they were just regular people that decided to start a podcast. You don't have to be a celebrity to have a big podcast. It probably helps. It definitely helps if you have name recognition and you have traffic that you can send to. But that traffic does not always, my point is, like, that traffic does not always equate to podcast downloads. It's a different type of audience. And if you're just going to whine about it, then, like, you're never going to do well in life in anything that you do, because there's always going to be people that have advantages in any path that you choose. So, like, what's the alternative? What's the solution? Roll over and just give up because other good people are coming into the space? It's like, no, like, good content is good for the space. That's inarguable. If you are a fan of podcasts, you should be a fan of the progression of better content, because that will ultimately be better for the platform, be better for the listeners, be better for the medium, and be better for every creator. But if you're going to sit there and whine and complain about, like, oh, well, this person's coming on, it's not fair, and they're going to ruin the whole thing, it's like you're looking at this from this really, really scarcity minded view that I think is just going to poison you in whatever venture you go into, regardless of what it is.